everybody. On today's Gentle Parenting Show, I'm so excited to have our guest, Amanda Gorman. She is a wife, a mother of two, and the host of Finding Your Village podcast. So definitely go check her out and subscribe to her podcast. She's also a childbirth educator mentor. And in addition to her family, Amanda is passionate about writing, speaking, addiction and trauma recovery, music, racial reconciliation, and birth work. Her podcast focuses on birth, postpartum, and parent mental health. And the goal of the show is to make the early days of parenting more connected. Wow. Thank you so much for your mission and your work in helping parents. And I was reading on your website how you talk about how important it is for us as parents to have a village
Yeah.
in a time where we don't have villages, certainly not very easily. And I loved your take on what is a village in this, century, if you will. So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell
Yeah.
us, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for having me. It is an honor. And to be totally honest, talking about a village, I'm a little bit geeking out right now that I get to be on your podcast and talk to you because your book, The Sleep Ladies Good Night, Sleep Tight, was one of my first resources that I added to my parenting village. So
Thank
thank
you.
you very much
Thank
for
you.
writing that book and thank you for your mission and the work you do.
Thank you so much. I think
Yeah.
it's important that parents feel like I've always thought that, and it's sort of connected to this village because I also felt like when I had my first baby, like what happened? Nobody told me,
Exactly.
that breastfeeding's kind of hard.
Yeah.
Birth was a little hard,
Right.
and the whole thing was much more difficult than I thought. And I really, again, that was a while ago, but at the time there was only, Ferber. And
Yes.
as a family therapist, I thought there's got to be something else, right?
Mhm.
And so I created a gentler method, never thought it would all become this.
Yeah.
But it became part of my mission to have parents have options,
Yes.
right? That matches their child and their family's temperament, and hence, that ends up going into all aspects of parenting. And I'm a big believer, as you are, in, it's the whole family's mental health we need. It
Yes.
can't just be the baby, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So tell us more about, because I think that we're very like-minded in that way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think so too. And that's what really drew me to the work that you did.
Hmm.
And when I first became a mom, I, just like most new parents, was elated to have this new sweet baby. And I also didn't know what in the world I was doing. So
Right.
when my daughter started to have sleep regression at like 3.5 months old, I was like, oh no, what do I do? And I am a if you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram type 1. And
Hmm.
so my mission is to get it right. That is my MO.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
want to get it right. I want to do it right. And so I immediately started searching for resources of how do I get my baby to not wake up 5 or 6 times a night, because this is not sustainable for my mental health.
Hmm.
And there was a little bit of a panic of like, oh no, like I'm screwing it up already. Like this can't be good for her health. This can't be good for my health.
Hmm.
So I was immediately attracted to your mission and the gentle sleep approach, because it didn't sit right in my heart to let my baby cry it out.
Hmm.
And the thing about that is I think there's a range and a spectrum for most parenting topics and where you fall on that spectrum. And I
Hmm.
think that the important thing is to figure out where you fall on that spectrum and then identify it from there and then make your plans or your preferences. So
Hmm.
I don't judge any parents that choose a cry it out method or a
Hmm.
timed check method. For me, it didn't fit. It was not a good
Hmm.
fit.
Hmm.
So that's why I really adopted your methodology,
Hmm.
and ended up hiring a sleep consultant as well, because after I read your book, I was like, this is very complex. And on the lack of sleep that I have going on right now, I
Right.
need someone to hold my hand.
For
So, in
sure.
my opinion, I think that you can create a village not just by people that are around you. That's one aspect of it. Those are physical allies that
Mhm.
you can invite into your life and ask, for encouragement and help and support. But you can also add to your village by information and resources that are out there, such as books. So,
Mhm.
expertise that has been written, books, blogs, podcasts, audiobooks, as well as virtual support. So, the sleep consultant that worked with me, she lived in New Jersey. I live in Georgia. We never
Mhm.
met face to face,
Mhm.
but she was texting me back at 6 o'clock in the morning when we had, an early awakening.
Mhm.
She was there for us. And so she was absolutely part of my village and something that I would consider part of the village, even though she wasn't physically here.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine that finding your village is a lot about finding like-minded people too, you know?
Yeah.
So if
Hmm.
you're more of attachment parenting, then go seek those parents,
Yes.
right? And if you're
Hmm.
more, yeah, exactly. And I think
Yeah.
that that's essential. Otherwise, you're going to constantly, we live in a world filled with judgment,
Right.
and there is
Exactly.
no right or
There is no right way. That is a lesson that
wrong.
I have learned and that I keep
Mhm,
learning.
mhm,
And the genesis for my podcast was I was 7 months pregnant with my second baby, with my
mhm,
son Cooper. I was sitting in the bath. I was listening to a podcast, and literally, like, this idea just like dropped in my head. Why
mhm,
don't you start a podcast?
mhm,
And I at first kind of pushed back. I was like, um, why me, who me? And then I
mhm,
followed that inkling of an idea and kept going with it and pursuing it. And when I finally launched the podcast, when my son was over 1 years old,
mhm,
or almost 1 years old actually,
mhm,
um, when I actually launched the podcast, I thought, oh, I'm going to teach parents how to get this right. I'm going to teach them how to, get their baby on the right track as far as sleep goes, and let them know all of the expertise from Kim West.
mhm,
And, I'm going to do all this work for them so that they don't have to do it. And I just
mhm,
want to make parenting easier.
mhm,
So when I started out with that mission, I ate a big slice of humble pie when I
mhm,
realized that's not it. That's not helpful. And there is, in fact, a spectrum of all of these different parenting decisions
mhm,
that someone could fall on. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing it right or wrong. It's, does it resonate with them? Does it fit within their values?
mhm,
And does it fit within their lifestyle and what works for them?
mhm,
So I have since then morphed my mission into focusing on being more connected,
mhm,
because what is it about in a village but connecting with others, connecting with old sage advice,
mhm,
new technology and information, and
mhm,
people who can encourage you and support you no
mhm,
matter where you fall on any spectrum. And so I also think that it's
mhm,
really important, and you touched on this, kindness and compassion, and recognizing that, you know, judgment is not helpful. And so if somebody else is going to not necessarily be like minded as you are on a specific topic, doesn't mean that they're wrong or that you are to judge them. It
right.
just means that you have different opinions on
Yeah.
that. And
Mhm,
so that's, I also am very passionate about the idea of not buying into the mommy wars of
yeah.
breastfeeding versus formula feeding,
Right.
bed sharing versus
Right.
cried out method. You can
Right.
make things very, very polarized.
Yeah.
And I think it's important just to kind of be curious. Where do I
Mhm,
lie on this spectrum?
mhm,
How do I feel about this specific topic?
mhm,
And just be curious, take a posture of curiosity rather than judgment.
right. And I also think that, first of all, 100% agree on really in all aspects of life, right? It's always
Yeah.
a little bit more
Yes.
helpful if we're just curious. Luckily, I'm naturally curious. I'm the woman with 100 questions. Um, because like I have, of course in my life had, people who literally start a conversation with me to argue
Yeah.
about my stance, right?
Yeah. I could see that.
And and then they back off when I say, well, I'm not against co-sleeping.
Yeah,
If you're doing it safely and it's working for your family, you don't have a problem. It's all good.
exactly.
It's that the people that come to me are, it's not working in their family.
Right.
And I think we also have to be kinder and um, gentler with ourselves when our plan doesn't exactly work out, right? Whether it's our
Hmm.
birth, and
Yes.
delivery, and maybe the temperament baby we got, or, our own reaction to it. And it's a lot of places for us to have to really work on being kinder and gentler and letting go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You
Yeah,
must see that a lot in your birth work.
I do.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's where it starts, right? You
Hmm.
find out that you're pregnant, especially if you're a first time parent, and there's
Hmm.
so much excitement to go with that. And there's a lot of expectation as well.
Yeah.
We all are born into this world not knowing anything about how we got here. And at some point along the way,
Hmm.
we gather expectations from our society and our environment, whether it's seeing a sibling born in a hospital and you associate, oh, you have to go to a hospital to
Hmm.
have a baby. Or it's watching on TV and seeing a mom screaming after her water broke and in a flurry to get to, wherever she's giving birth. Oh, it's painful, it's scary, there's yelling involved. There's a lot of expectations that we glean over time about what
Yeah.
birth is, and that's where it starts. And that's where parents, get this idea of, I need to create a birth plan so that it meets my expectations.
Hmm.
And they might not even be aware of where they gathered those expectations from.
Mm.
And so the methodology that I have trained under to become a childbirth education mentor is called Birthing from Within.
Mhm.
And I took the Birthing from Within class when I was pregnant with my son, my second baby. And one of the many things that I really appreciate about that methodology that was created by Pam England is that birth and the intro into parenting, the foray into parenting, is all about figuring out what you do
Mhm.
when you don't know what to do.
Mhm.
Birth is all
Mm.
about the unknown, parenting, all about the unknown. And there's so many opportunities to try to control an outcome, come up with a plan, come up with a birth plan, come up with a
Mhm.
sleep plan, come up with a baby schedule.
Right.
There's a lot of opportunities to do that, yet not everything goes to plan.
Right.
And if you think more about your preferences, what's important to you, where do things intersect with your value system, then that can inform your intuition about what you do when you bump up against the next unknown that comes up in life, whether
Mhm.
it be in pregnancy,
Mhm.
during childbirth,
Mhm.
during the first couple weeks when you have a little newborn and you don't have a whole lot of sleep going on.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that I have really internalized,
Mhm.
and it has helped me grow not only as a parent but also as a birth worker as I enter into this new industry and career.
Exciting. And
Yeah.
so, what would that look like? So, if I'm a pregnant
Hmm.
mom and
Yeah.
I'm creating because I do remember being told to create a birth plan.
Sure.
So does that mean that you're saying, oh, let's go in, let's have like a plan B? Like if it doesn't
Good
go,
question.
yeah. Tell me about.
Good
Mhm.
question. So I think it starts with having a posture of, rather than being committed to a plan, maybe coming up with a list of preferences. So I
Mhm.
call it birth preferences. I prefer that language of figuring out
I like that.
what are the things that are important to you,
Mhm.
and then just kind of going from there. So,
Mhm.
for instance, if you're a first time parent, you don't know anything about childbirth,
Mhm.
and you learn that the hospital that you are going to deliver at has a standard practice of clamping the cord
Mhm.
right after baby is born. And then you learn that there's actually benefits to delayed cord clamping,
Mm-hmm.
of letting the cord pulsate the blood for 5, 6, 7 minutes, so that your baby can get as much blood from the placenta as possible. And you learn that and you say, oh, yeah, I absolutely want to do that. Then you know that that's one of your preferences. That's something you
Right.
would prefer. Now, if you give birth and there's a complication, there is a medical reason why they need to take the baby over to the warmer to help them to breathe or to become more alert or do some type of procedure right away, then your plan B is not going with delayed cord clamping, because that would not be as beneficial for your baby.
Right.
So, yes, your preference is to do that if all things go according to plan or
Right.
all things are okay medically.
Right.
But if you need to punt and go
Right.
with that plan B, then you know that at least you've done research, and it. I think that it's important to have a posture of being okay with doing the next right thing given the information that you have in the
Yeah.
moment.
Right.
So that's just one example. But yeah, there's certain things that, it's not just birth, but like I remember when I was getting married, there was a million things I could think about for planning my wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being like, I don't care about flowers. I do not care at all. And I had some girlfriends that were like, oh, I'm going to spend $2,000 on flowers because I love flowers and
Right.
I love this. And I was like, I could care
Right.
less. But my wedding dress, that was really important to me.
Right.
And that's where I spent a lot of energy and financial
Right.
resources as well.
Right.
So when it comes to birth or parenting, I think it's the same thing. What's that thing
Mm-hmm.
that really kind of pings you
Mm-hmm.
and makes you think a lot, or is important to you
Mm-hmm.
and you feel it in your body?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then be open to it going a different way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And be informed
Yeah.
that there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as well, it's not just being prepared as far as on paper what's going to
Right.
happen with the particular birth plan, but being practiced
Mm-hmm.
in knowing what to do, knowing what you tend to do when you come up against something that is unknown or
Mm-hmm.
perhaps even fearful.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the things that we do in Birthing from Within that I at first kind of laughed at and wanted to skip over was we do birth art.
Mm-hmm.
So, we actually will have different, um, you know, tasks or activities that we'll go through. And the idea is not to waste someone's precious time not learning about the physiology of birth,
Mm-hmm.
but rather when you have a chalk in your hand and a blank piece of paper, you get to practice. I don't know what to put on this paper. Like I could put anything. And
Oh.
you bump up against that. What am I going to do when I don't know what to do?
Right.
And it's a very light entry
Mm-hmm.
into this
Mm-hmm.
practice. And so, you just like when you strength train, you're building that muscle, you're building that neural pathway in your brain
Mm-hmm.
of this isn't so scary because I've done this before in a very mild way, but I've done this before.
Right. Hmm. I was just thinking
Yeah.
that then I would imagine you could apply it to you come home and, your baby's gone through that sort of 2 week honeymoon where they're kind of quietish, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, and
Hmm.
then they start, coming alive and crying. And
Yes.
sometimes we don't, maybe not even, maybe it's more than sometimes, we don't know how to calm them down, and
Yes.
that can cause a
Exactly.
lot of panic. I mean, our bodies
Yeah.
are made to respond, you
That's
know,
right.
and to fix, like stop the
Yeah.
baby from crying. And that is when you get a really kind of alert, live wire baby, that's harder.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And that's something I also like to go over with expecting parents is some of the pain coping
Hmm.
techniques that I'll have them practice for in preparation for
Yeah.
labor, in case they want to have an unmedicated
Yeah.
birth or for those times that are either fearful or
Hmm.
painful. I just remind them they can use those breath awareness techniques in those moments with a newborn
Mm,
when they have very little sleep or the baby has been crying for 90 seconds, at like a level 10 out of 10 of
right,
crying and they just don't know what to
right.
do. Like you can tap into that. You have an internal resource that you've already
Mm-hmm,
practiced. You can tap into
mm-hmm,
that. And also, I talk about not just the kind of woo woo, side of what can you do with your breath,
hmm.
but also some practical things like if you need a moment as a parent at any stage,
Mm-hmm,
whether they're a newborn or they're 2.5, like my
mm-hmm,
son, and they are just screaming in their
mm-hmm.
crib and you are at the
Yeah.
end, you
Mm-hmm,
cannot anymore, know that another tool that you have in your tool belt is to walk away and take a mommy timeout or a daddy
mm-hmm.
timeout for 60 seconds, for 90
Right.
seconds. It seems like a really long time, and you can actually do several rounds of breath
Yeah.
and bring your nervous system back down to like a grounded level. And your baby is going to be totally
Right.
fine if they're in a safe place like their bassinet or their
Right.
crib and you've done what you can to make sure that they're physically
Right.
safe. They like it's not going to have long-term effects
Right.
of that you let them cry for 60 to 90
Right.
seconds. If you go calm
Right.
yourself down so then you can be present
Yeah.
again as the best version of you, the best version of the parenting version of you,
Yes.
that's going to be helpful for everyone.
Here, here. I would agree. Yeah, because I think that I was talking with one of my other guests, Dr. Shosh, about some of the myths of motherhood, and
Hmm.
how we think, oh, we should be able to handle this, and it's what we wanted. So how dare we complain or say this is, or I ran a big company before. What do you mean I can't handle one little baby? And same for the dads too,
Yes.
and partners in general. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
Absolutely. And I think that's where
mhm,
compassion comes in, of having compassion with yourself and really taking a step back and thinking, okay, even though I ran a big company, I've never had a screaming 2-month old in my hands for five
right,
minutes. I've never done
right,
this before. So it makes sense that this is stressful. And just tapping into that compassion of, I know that I'm doing what I can, and this sucks right
right,
now. And I don't have to judge myself and say, I should love this. I should be so
right,
lucky to have a baby. That doesn't help really in that moment,
right.
but rather just tap into that resource of self
Yeah,
compassion of, okay, this makes sense. This sucks. And I will
right,
get through it.
right. So the mental health of the family, as you can imagine, being, a family therapist myself, is like number one.
Yeah.
Maybe how they have the saying, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. I didn't
Right.
really understand that when I was younger. I was like, really? And now I totally get it. And it could be in whoever. If it's just, if parent isn't happy, nobody,
Yeah.
will be happy. And um and I was just thinking about how so much of being connected and mental health is literally to be connected and therefore a village. Like I love Brene Brown. I'm
Yes.
sure you would
Hmm.
too. And she's like,
Biggest fan.
we're hardwired for connection, yet we're living in a
That's right.
world, and especially, coming out of a pandemic where we haven't had a lot of connection. And some of our
Exactly.
connection isn't intimate, enough.
Yeah.
And so let's go back sort of full circle about what are other ways that you find that parents can create village. You started
Yeah.
off with like through books, and
Hmm.
what are some of your other, I mean, I can imagine, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great question. And also, I just want to claim that I'm Brene Brown biggest fan.
Oh yeah.
I'm I'm just joking, but really, I am very very
Hmm.
obsessed with her and the work that
Yeah.
she has done. And she's actually one of the influences for why I changed my mission
Hmm.
to being about being connected rather than getting it right or making parenting easier, because that's
She
silly and
would be proud
impossible.
of you.
It's just hard. Well, thank you. So I'll start with going from a birth preparation
Yeah.
perspective. So during birth, you can gather your resources. You naturally gather resources in the form of seeking out an OBGYN or a midwife and a birth
Mhm.
team to help you welcome your baby earthside, however they
Right.
are born. You can add physical resources to that village as well in the form of a doula.
Mhm.
I'm a big
Mhm.
fan of labor and delivery
Yes.
doulas and
Mhm.
postpartum doulas. And that's someone that can
Mhm.
physically be present with you during labor and the birth
Mhm.
of your baby, or depending on what's going on in the world, a
Mhm.
pandemic, you know, just and other stuff happens too. They can also be with you in spirit and on the
Mhm.
phone. It is amazing
Mhm.
how much someone can actually help via FaceTime or
Yes.
even text
Yes.
messages, and just kind of holding that
Mhm.
space. And then an exercise that I like to go through with expecting parents when thinking about building their initial postpartum
Mhm.
village is thinking about people, resources, and internal
Mhm.
resources. So, external resources and internal resources. So, in thinking about people, I encourage parents to think about, okay, who are people that physically are in your area that could be those that bring dinner, that bring you lunch, that can come fold your dirty laundry or your clean laundry, wash your dirty laundry, fold your clean laundry, that can physically come help you. Then, who are those folks that, whether they're not physically available
Mhm.
to come because they're too far
Mhm.
away or pandemic, who are those emotional
Mhm.
allies? Who are those people that you can call or text when you are just at your wits' end and you're just
Mhm.
crying? Because the people who will come fold your laundry might not be the people that are your emotional allies. And it's
Right.
not because there's anything wrong with them. That just not might not be
Right.
their natural
Yeah.
suit. So I like to actually have parents write down who are your emotional
Mhm.
allies, the people, your phone a friend folks, who are the ones that you can call on. If you're in a church group, like a
Mhm.
small group, then those could be folks that maybe you're not super, super close with emotionally, but they would be happy to bring
Right.
you a casserole
Mhm.
or, pay for your
Mhm.
DoorDash dinner that night. I think it's important to have both. There might be some crossover,
Mhm.
but there might not be. Then external resources. In pregnancy, a lot of people tend to start reading or listening to podcasts. So pay attention to what those books are, articles, podcasts are that really resonate with you. And if it doesn't, then just
Mhm.
keep moving on. There's
Mhm.
no judgment there. But if you listen to Kim West podcast and you're like, yep, this totally resonates with me, then, keep going and look in
Mhm.
that circle for other
Mhm.
resources. So external resources can be books, articles, blogs, podcasts, audiobooks, and it can also be services that you can
Mhm.
hire as well. So those services could be
Mhm.
doulas, which I mentioned, labor doulas,
Mhm.
postpartum doulas, um, sleep
Mhm.
consultants. If you are reading about baby
Mhm.
sleep and you're like me and you're like, I get it, but this putting it into practice
Yeah.
is really difficult, hire someone for 2 weeks to hold your hand
Mhm.
through the process. It will be
Mhm.
money well spent. Trust me. Um, if you're having issues with feeding, whether you're breastfeeding or you're bottle feeding, there are lactation consultants and
Mhm.
feeding specialists that can help
Mhm.
you as well. Support groups
Mhm.
talking about mental health. There are pregnancy support groups. There are postpartum and newborn
Yeah.
support groups. Um, there, a lot of them are meeting online now. Some are actually in person.
And
And then
find it,
lastly,
and if you
yeah,
don't like click or you feel judged, keep going. Yeah.
right? Exactly. Yes, that
Mhm.
is so important. And for
Mhm.
any of these, if it's just not working for you, like no judgment,
Mhm.
just moving on, and you don't have to
Mhm.
apologize to anyone. It's just okay, tried it on, wasn't the right fit,
Yep.
just like a pair of jeans.
Mhm.
And then the last aspect of building your village, I would say, is internal resources. And so that can be like practices before you have a baby, like meditation, breath
Mhm.
awareness work. What are things that you can do to center yourself? And what are the things that light you up? What are the things that are restorative for you? Are you someone that loves to go for a walk? Are you a
Mhm.
napper? Do you love books? Do you have, a favorite show like Grey's
Mhm.
Anatomy for me that I will
Mhm.
just binge watch? Um, is it calling a friend? Is it, doing your favorite workout if you're in that stage where you're able to do that? What are those restorative things that help you as a person just
Mhm.
be grounded,
Mhm.
bring you joy? And then I actually recommend that people write those things down and think about how long do those activities take. And I encourage parents to write down 10-minute activities, 30-minute activities, and then 2 hours plus.
Great.
Because if you have your mother in law come and say, oh, well, I'll watch the baby for the next hour. She just ate. You go do whatever you want. And you're faced with, oh my gosh, I've got 30 minutes before I know that she's going to get hungry again. What am I going to
Right.
do? Don't waste a single
Mhm.
second thinking
Mhm.
about what you're going to do. Go to your cheat sheet and look at that list of things I can do for 30 minutes or a couple things off of the
I love
10-minute
that.
list. Okay, I'm going to take a bubble bath and I'm going to listen to my favorite podcast that I haven't
Right.
been able to catch up on, or
Right.
take a nap, whatever that thing is. But then you've got this cheat sheet literally, for all of these things, all of these resources. I do this in my life, and I don't have a newborn. I have a 4.5-year-old
Mhm.
and a 2.5-year-old, and I have a list of things that I can do depending on if I want to be productive or if I need some emotional support or if I need some type of restoration. How much time do I have? And then insert with
I
the cheat sheet.
love that because I really do. I
Thank you.
think the time piece is crucial because I think we can also be like, oh, I'm going to like do 500 things in my 30 minutes and then not feel
Hmm.
restored because, of course,
Right.
we won't get it all
Yeah.
done. And then we'll. And I was
Yeah.
also thinking about how really this is a reminder for all of us that it's okay and it's essential to put ourselves first. I think
That's
that
right.
it's really easy to forget that, you know, and that, oh
It
no,
is.
it's all about
Yep.
baby. And not to mention having, imagine some things on that list that are restorative to you and connect you with your partner, you know, go
Yes,
for a walk with your
absolutely. That is so
partner, or I
important.
don't know, sit on the back deck and
Yep.
look at the sunset, or.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. I totally
Yeah,
agree with that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Even though it's even, I guess we just forget about that, right? You forget about.
Yeah.
I wonder now, though, whether with this pandemic, um, whether it will shift things because, and maybe people valuing and seeing Village more, and how much we
Yeah.
need it. Yeah.
I hope so. I really hope so. And I'm hopeful
Hmm.
that that is the case, and not only see how we need it, but be
Yeah.
creative about how we
Well,
get it. It doesn't just
yeah,
have to
we've
be
definitely
face to
had to
face.
be.
Yeah,
Yeah. And also, I think
exactly.
I know a lot of my friends are looking at how did I use my time before, and how maybe I want to spend more time with my like-minded people who fill me and in activities that fill me. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think it's so
absolutely.
critical in parenting. It's a shame that the parenting world is so divided and judgmental. And
It is.
unfortunately, I haven't
It
seen
is.
that change in my 27 years of being a
Yeah.
parent. um, so I guess we just will keep carrying our torch and our mission. And I think just
Exactly.
for me, I always say, well, I'm just not going to partake and I'm going to do what I can to be as free of judgment
Right.
in in life as
Yeah.
possible, knowing that that's constant work, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Control what
right.
only what you can
And we all
control.
know that we even have trouble controlling ourselves, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So, oh my good.
Exactly.
I really loved our time today. Thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing
Thank you
your
so much.
wisdom and your take on Village. I love that, and I especially love the time, creating a cheat sheet of the timed activities. Definitely will make that a call out for
Thank you.
parents. Yeah, yeah.
Great. Thank you. I
Oh,
hope
I'm
that
sure
it's
it will
helpful.
be. And so, if you want to learn more about Amanda and her work and follow her on social media, just go to sleeplady.com/podcast and you can learn all about her. And if you loved this episode, please subscribe and send a review. And don't forget to, we don't want you to miss out on any future episodes. So, thanks again, Amanda.